Hello, welcome to this episode of the Financial Incline. I'm your host, John Bovard. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Scott McGohan. Scott was the second generation business owner of McGohan Brabender. Scott talks about his work career and his history. We also get into some of the details of his book, Culture is an Inside Job. We talk about how he was able to grow and scale his business from just a handful of employees up to hundreds of employees. We talked about what were some of the successes and what are the things that worked well for him. We also talk about some of the challenges and the failures that he faced along the way and some of the ways that he was able to break through those walls and really go on to mature as a person first before going on to grow and scale his company. And then lastly, we discuss his recent transition from making the company into employee-owned through an ESOP. So what was some of the reasoning behind that, and what were some of the benefits that he began to see from that? Also, we discussed what is coming up next for Scott and what will the next chapter look like for him. So for those of you that are business owners and you're looking for successful ways that you can grow and to scale your company, make sure you check out my conversation with Scott McGohan. Hey, Scott, how you doing this afternoon?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I was able to provide a brief introduction, but for those that are watching or for those that are listening in, would you just mind sharing a little bit about yourself and your background and kind of what led to where you're at today?
Yeah, that's a long story. So, what I'd love today is I married my best friend. It'll be 37 years in June. So her name's Lori. Got two kids, Courtney and Taylor, both married. Have grandkids. We should have had those on this planet first for sure. Jackson and Ellison. Fortunately, I was, blessed to, work inside an organization called McGohan Brabender for 35 plus years. Retired last Friday from there. So now I'm just kind of hanging out, about ready to kick something else up, which is kind of cool. Wrote a book that got released last year, and just kind of enjoying life right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's very fresh then, fresh off the retirement. Well, congratulations on that, obviously, and congratulations on a wonderful career. So, but if you wouldn't mind kind of taking us back to the beginning, like I said, I heard you speak at a SHRM event, and you gave some great insight there. So from kind of a work history in your career, if you would mind sharing with us, kind of how your career evolved, account executive, moving into the president's role, co-chairman role, kind of what that looked like for you during your career.
Yeah, it's an ugly story. So it's not it ends well, but the journey and the path. And I tell people a lot, like I don't use my past to torture myself. I use it to teach others. So, I'm a founder's kid, which, there's probably people that might listen that, they might have a kid inside of the organization.
Yeah.
And I was what I referred to as destructive heroes. And a lot of organizations have them. And it's somebody who's a high performer, probably really good at sales, manages a lot of accounts, and quite frankly, just somebody that gets away with everything. I was that person until someone was brave enough to knock on my door and say, there's values painted on the wall. You don't exhibit one of them. And I have my own set of values, and today's my last day. So that was a mic drop.
Wow.
Now, in all fairness, I was just curious about how many other people heard that because my ego was that big. Like, who else heard that conversation? So, I talked to her and said, hey, could we talk in the morning? She said we could. And then I just said, hey, look, if I hired a coach, would you give me a chance? So I hired a coach. I give you access to that coach. You could call him. You could say, hey, is he getting better? Is he working towards this back and forth? And I gave you complete access. And, she said, yeah. And then we agreed to ask each other 3 questions every day. Am I okay? Are you okay? Are we okay? And it was the beginning of a new opportunity to grow Scott, to look at myself, and I wouldn't trade a second of it. Now, fortunately, Victoria, she retired from McGohan Brabender last year,
Okay.
so she's my truth teller. I got to
Yeah.
put her on the victory cart and push her out to the front seat of her car. And then she got to come to my retirement party last Friday and celebrate me leaving. So
Yeah.
my only advice for people is, man, find a truth teller, find someone that can tell you the truth.
hmm hmm Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I hadn't heard that term until you brought it up of the destructive hero. So for you, it sounds like you had kind of that eye-opening event, with Victoria. So what were obviously the coaching was involved, but what were some of the steps or processes you went through to then make that pivot and really make a big change in your career?
Yeah, what's interesting too is like I went home and told my wife, like, hey, this is what, this woman said to me. And, it's a bunch of BS. And she's like, no, she's right. I'm like, well, like, why haven't you told me? Oh, yeah, I've told you. You just haven't been listening. I was like, oh, ouch.
Yeah.
So I had this warped sense of self worth. I thought self worth equaled performance plus the opinions of other people.
hmm
So, and the faster I went, um, the cars that I drove, the houses that I lived in, all of the stuff that I had society would tell me that I was okay, and sadly, that's what happened. And so I really had a really warped sense of what self worth was all about, and my coach kind of helped me identify that. So what was really important to me in my life, sadly, in the beginning, was all material things.
hmm
And as I began to unpack that, like all of a sudden, and I don't know if your listeners can relate to this or not, but I was so used to chaos in my life that when peace came, I had to screw something up because it was like, man, I'm not used to feeling that.
hmm
That's way too, that's foreign.
Right.
Um,
Right.
does that make sense?
It does. It
Yeah.
does. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, and then as far as that goes from that inflection point for you, what were some of the keys to then that growing and scaling your business? Whether that be from a business development side or a sales side, or was it more kind of looking internally and coaching your team, being the leader? What were some of the key success points for scaling your business?
Yeah. I think, back then, I don't know how many people we had, 40. I think when like, I got my massive speeding ticket. I think when I retired, we had two companies. I think between the two of them, we might have close to 500. So,
Wow.
I mean, we've really kind of grown quite a bit.
hmm
But really, what it taught me is the fact that there's only one thing that can make your wildest dreams come true, and that's people.
Yeah.
Products are innovated by people, services are designed by people, they're executed by people, they're bought by people, manufactured by people, shipped by people, thrown away by people.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to inspire and encourage people, then you don't have an ability to inspire and grow an organization. So,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful that I had someone like Victoria like teach me that when I was younger.
Mm.
Um, because society will give you kind of some hall passes when you're young,
Right.
but as you get older, man, you don't get those hall passes.
No.
Like you don't even get speeding tickets. You get termination letters, divorce
hmm
papers, bankruptcy court. You get the full Monty for
Right.
all of that. So I was blessed to learn that early.
hmm hmm Yeah. Well, good. So, yeah. So, at what age did you have the inflection point, and then what kind of pursued after that? Was this, as far as the changes goes? Obviously, you said you and Victoria checked in with each other on those three things. Um, but I'm sure there were other people at the company that you were, either reported to you or that you managed. And did they start to see those changes as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I'm guessing maybe 32 when that whole thing kind of came to a head.
Okay.
And then there was a bunch of naysayers. So one of the greatest gifts that all of us have is we can be different tomorrow than we are today.
Okay.
But the issue is the fact that we can't expect others to embrace that new behavior because they're not used to that. They're like, he'll go back to where he was before.
Exactly.
So you're going to have an army of naysayers, bystanders, and victims. But if you truly believe in an authentic new self, and that brings peace and joy into your life, then keep moving towards that. Be brave about it. Just
Hmm.
be super brave about it. And
Right.
ultimately, what I learned is it just drives so much peace and serenity in your life. And you become attractive to other people, not like in what you wear or a vain way, but in
Right.
your emotions and your feelings. And it's just a cool way to live.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So were there any moments or things that you specifically remember? Because a lot of what you're talking about, I've read a couple of things. Dan Sullivan, who's the strategic coach, they talk about kind of being your future self, right? Not letting your past dictate how you act in the present, but kind of gearing towards that future self and how do I want my future self to be and act and do. um so were there any moments where you kind of sat back and said like wow, okay, I've this is working, I've reached these points or these milestones, and things are going well.
I think it starts with it's like a triangle, and the top of the triangle is the experiences and the words that you heard or you told yourself. So those are the lies. I
Hmm.
grew up and I was dyslexic, had a lazy eye. I had an identical twin brother. So you got to fight for your own identity.
Right.
And that triangle goes down to identity and then it shoots out to behaviors. So that's how I behave.
Hmm.
And a lot of that it's no fun to look at. I mean, it is no fun to look at, but there is no truth inside of fear, and there is no fear inside of truth. So if you really want serenity and peace in your life, you have to look at the truth, which means you got to stare down the barrel of fear.
Yep.
And it is really around maybe who you wanted to be when you were that 8-year old little boy sitting in a treehouse. And then
Mhm.
society told you lies, you told yourself lies. And then you get to that brave position around this is who I'm going to be. This is who I wanted to be. And obviously, faith is important to you, which is it's important to me. Is
Mhm.
when you can understand your purpose,
Yep.
life just gets fun. And every day you get to make that choice. I'm going to be better tomorrow than I was today. Every day you get to do that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's great, and I love I love that explanation on on truth and fear. So that's fantastic. And what were so I guess then you mentioned as a kid some of the things that you were afraid of, but then fast forward into your career, like you said, being the founder's kid, what were some of those fears that you had to overcome?
Oh yeah, like when the Affordable Care Act was passed. Well, and you've dealt with that. I mean, as far
Mhm.
as massive legislation in your business, it's
Yeah.
like, holy cow, you sit at
Right.
home, like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Everyone's looking up at you, like, what are we going to do? And you're like, I don't know what we're going to do.
Yes. Right.
But man, you just get really brave. And I don't know you that well, but here's what I think I know is when you serve your customers
Hmm.
and when you serve them, you'll always win.
Yeah.
When things become selfish and self-serving, you'll always lose.
Yeah.
And so when those big events happened, it was like, how are we going to serve our customers in the most compelling way?
Yeah.
And and not only is that authentic, but it's loving, and that's also contagious. So we just created a workforce like, hey, let's figure this out. Let's take care of our customers,
Hmm.
and it worked. It absolutely it worked, and it was not that complicated. Sometimes we try to make it super complicated, super
Right.
profound.
Hmm.
That was
Right.
a long answer to a short question.
No, that was great. Yeah, I really do appreciate that. And they because I think for many people as they're growing a business, as they're founding it, or if they're their Gen 2 leader, it oftentimes might have that imposter syndrome, right? I mean, you've got I'm supposed to be the guy, I'm supposed to be the leader, I'm supposed to be the man or woman leading this company, and it can be lonely, right? I mean, it can be a struggle, and if it's mentors or if it's a coach, certain steps you took, I think are great. I think there's definitely different routines. So, are there any set routines that you would follow? You mentioned the one of them of checking in with Victoria. Um, any other types of routines that helped you, uh, through the daily grind, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I think one is find a truth teller in your company that's willing to tell you the truth, and that can do that with truth and grace. Because
Yeah,
truth with no grace is just mean,
yeah,
and
right.
grace without any truth is meaningless. So how do you bring like light to that? Your kids won't tell you the truth because if they do, they'll lose stuff like cell phones and car keys and stuff they want.
Yeah,
So you got to find
exactly.
that colleague that's going to be really honest with you. So that and then you got to nudge them too. It's like, come on, like I need some feedback. And
Hmm.
how do you do that in a humane way?
Right.
Um, and then I tell people I'm on the recruitment committee, not the membership committee, but as far as a big part of my life is prayer. Like, how do I do that? How do I
Yeah.
ask, really remove everything I know about myself, about you in this world, and open my heart and my experience to a new experience about you, me, in this world. And I'm just going to be curious today. I'm just going to learn.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
59 and I don't have it all figured out. And, that served me pretty well for the last 20 years. So I'm probably
Yeah.
going to keep it that way.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And a lot of it stems back to, being interested instead of interesting. Um, so people, like you said, you became more attractive to the other people in your organization, and that definitely stems from just being interested in them and how can you help them and how can you help your customers and help your clients.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like what you just said. I had someone tell me a long time ago, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
Yep.
And I think sometimes we're trying to be interesting or important and we're missing all the magic around us, all of it, and the opportunity to grow and inspire people.
Yes. Right. Right. Well, good. Well, good. And so, like you said, you've made it through. You scaled the business and into two companies. So, once you were kind of in that growing phase and that driving phase, were there certain things that you were hoping to accomplish, milestones, whether it be goals for your family or a sense of security, anything along the road that hey, this was a great milestone that we hit as a company, or also personally for you.
Yeah, there's a couple things. One is like resetting our core truths, so our cultural values, and adding more contemporary language. So,
Yeah.
and we had them; they were probably 20 years old. So we're bringing a lot of young people in. So how do you add new language? That was a lot of fun, and I'm really
Yeah.
glad I got my fingerprints and my heart like on top of that.
Hmm.
The second thing was, how do we perpetuate this business? So in this world, and there's nothing wrong with private enterprise. There's nothing wrong with private equity. There's nothing wrong with public companies. But
Hmm.
I find that private enterprise in a community does beautiful things.
Yeah.
And the
Right.
only way to do that is how do you protect that? And so selling our company to our workforce, becoming an ESOP,
Hmm.
was one of those like flags you could just put in the sand to say, guess what? Like it's not permanent. I mean, things can change,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it is, it's a different day. So now walking in the walls of McGohan Brabender and seeing, 300 owners, like that
Hmm.
is super cool.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is perpetuating my role is, it's something we worked on for 4 years. I mean, I'm 59. I had a lot of gas in the tank.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
but we had two people, Eric Schmidt and Beth Farron. They're ready,
Hmm.
and when they're ready, you got to give them the chair because if you don't, they'll go somewhere else and lead.
Right.
And then when you're ready, then there's nobody to take it, and that's bad for you, and that's bad for your company. So it's probably those three big rocks.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, you mentioned that, and like I said, you mentioned it was last Friday, so maybe this is sure it's something you've been preparing for for a long time, but when you sat down and thought about what's next for you from a succession standpoint, or an exit, What else? What kind of led to the decision of the ESOP?
It was really, my father founded the company. So I think I started there. I was the seventh person that worked there. And
Wow.
then then I was named CEO, I don't know, 14 years ago, Mike Subban.
Okay.
And he told us, he goes, "You ever sell this place, I'll haunt you." So it's some fear set in us.
Yeah.
But he really believed in perpetuation of private enterprise, and we worked with a lot of people at Aileron, Claymatil, the organization that he founded in Tip City, and they believe in the perpetuation of private enterprise. So we leaned into that in a big way.
Yeah.
And I've seen all my dreams come true, for my family, and I know if we would have, if we sold that to the organization and those employees their dreams could come true.
Right.
And so stepping away and watching them have big 401k balances and having stock values and be able to retire and in a way that is just going to be really meaningful for them, feels really good.
Yeah. Yeah. That is. And did obviously you mentioned your father, you being the seventh employee. Was there thoughts of kind of passing it on to your children as well? Did that cross your mind, or was that a goal for you, or anything you thought of?
No, family dynamics are interesting.
Hmm.
I'm not really sure. It it it, it can it can be destructive,
Hmm.
and you better have some high emotional intelligence to be able to navigate those waters of nepotism inside of a company,
Yeah.
because you never get a break.
Right.
I mean, you don't go home to family.
True.
Work is it just lives with you. And to
Hmm.
be honest with you, I really I didn't want that for I did it,
Yep.
and but I just did not want that for my kids. I just didn't.
Hmm.
And even as an organization, I think if we started today, we wouldn't call ourselves McGohan Brabender. I mean, that was just something we did 50 years ago because that's what
Right.
law firms sounded like. The
Yes.
name would be different. I mean, it would be completely different. So I'm not really sure that's super important to me.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting because I know there's yeah, there's obviously business owners and some of it is, hey, bring the kids involved. Sam Walton, he had his kids working in the stores and he gave them shares of Walmart, right? Very early on. And this was it. But that was his way to spend time with his kids because he knew he
Oh
was always
yeah,
working. So but yeah, so very interesting to hear your perspective on that from obviously having seen both sides of it, right? Having your father in the business, and then would you want to make this a third generation business? So yeah, good insight there. So yeah, you mentioned so 59, which is obviously a very young retirement age. So I can't picture you as somebody that's going to retire off to the beach. So um, what are you up to, and kind of what's next for you?
yeah. I think, well, I wrote a book last year called "Cultures and Inside Jobs," so I speak about that a lot, um, and that Victoria story is in there. A
Yeah.
lot of detail around what it took to kind of walk through that, and then I have a lot of passion around mental health and substance abuse, and so actually on the heels of retiring, I'm actually kicking up a new company. So I retired on
Okay.
Friday,
Yes.
and we're kicking up a new one, and that will include my kids.
Okay.
So my son's a filmmaker,
Hmm.
and we'll have some family guiding principles. And in other words, these are the rules. And if we don't abide by them, then family's going to come first, and the company will come second.
Okay. Yes.
So,
Okay.
I'm real excited about what that's going to look like.
Hmm.
How we're going to bring life to that, and also, but for most leaders is, and you brought this up too, is if you don't have the gift of being vulnerable, then you probably shouldn't lead,
Right.
because people look at, even inside your organization, John, they look at you like you got it all figured out, and
Hmm.
he doesn't have any problems. And I bet in the doldrums, we've all got something.
Yes. Right.
And if we're vulnerable, it lets other people know they're not alone, and
Hmm.
we can bring that to life, and life just gets easier for all.
Yes. Yeah. And it establishes trust. I mean, that's,
Hmm.
for me, they know that they can relate to you, and then it feels more trustworthy, right? Because like you said, no one's got it all figured out. And if in the investing world, if someone tells you they do have the stock market figured out and everything else figured out, those are the people you should run from, right?
Oh yeah.
So,
Hey, you got a bunch of books behind you. What's your favorite book?
yeah. So there's a couple that I really like, that I think that I reread very often. And then there's some that like are kind of the more recent books, but um, so I would put it, my workbooks are, the essays of Warren Buffett and the Buffett Way. Those have had some of the biggest impact from the investing side of things. From the personal side, it's, how to win friends and influence people, is definitely up there. And then the magic of thinking big. I would say that's a big one as
Oh,
well.
that's cool.
And then, yeah, one last one is probably Steve Schwarzman's book, which is What It Takes. So it's, Steve Schwarzman and Warren Buffett, I'd say, like, career wise, are kind of two of the guys that I look up to. Steve Schwarzman at Blackstone.
Yeah,
Um, those two. So that kind of rounds out the top five, I would say.
that's cool. Well, if
Yeah.
you look at like Buffett's portfolio, it's just like all of that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, it just makes sense. It's like note to
Yeah.
self. Like
Right.
he knows yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
good for you.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I mean, he's yeah, what he's been able to accomplish and how he's, level-headed, and the main thing with him is loving what you do, right? I mean, he just finds something he's passionate about, and what he's passionate about is business. It's reading earnings reports. It's, so he loves what he does. He does it every day, and he's in his 90s. And like he said, he'll, just like Charlie Munger, who passed away last November. um he'll work till his dying day, but it's not work to him. So
Yeah, yeah.
that I find to be pretty
That,
interesting. So
that's cool. That's
yeah, what
awesome.
would you so besides your own book, what would you say, or what are some of your favorite books then?
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question. Holy cow. Oh, I just ordered one. Oh my gosh, I just ordered it. Just came in. It was called, I forget the author, but how to get to know people.
Okay.
I'm a big believer. I think with automation and AI, I think one of the
Hmm.
greatest assets that we can grow into as humans is the gift of artificial intelligence, or of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
How do we how do we lock onto that? Because I don't want to live in a world where AI figures out emotional intelligence. I just
Right.
I just don't want to live on that planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think Richard Rohr. So he's his and then there's I think it's Kelly, Tom Kelly, maybe.
Hmm.
He lived in Cincinnati. He wrote this thing called, I think it was called Holy Moments.
Yep.
Um,
I've heard of
Great
that.
book.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I'm all over the map right now, which is
Hmm.
good. So I'm like bending and flexing around.
Yes, yeah, that is. Yeah, I try to mix it up as well. Typically it's mainly, investing, business books. And read a book recently by Michael Ovitz, he was like a big time Hollywood agent, founded CAA, the talent agency, which is, completely unrelated to wealth management. But it's a service-based business. And
Yeah.
his story is pretty spectacular as well. So yeah, it's no, I'm typically reading about two at a time. Just kind of circling through
Yeah. Good for you.
through those books.
Awesome. That's good for you.
Yeah, yeah. So um but Scott, so that's, fantastic to hear about your kind of what's next for you. And now you're doing something, with your kids, and I'm sure it'll be a fantastic future for you, and probably feels like you're just getting started. really, even though you had the retirement last week, but how long would you say? So if you started this new organization that you've got going on, is there a goal for that as far as when you might want to stop doing that, or hey, is this a 5-year plan, 10-year plan? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it, if it could be 3 or 4, it'd be wonderful. It
Hmm.
would be great. But I spent most of my life lonely, tired, broken, and afraid.
Hmm.
And if I can build a company to try to find people just like me that are lonely, tired, broken, and afraid, then it doesn't feel like work.
Right.
But if I had, I don't know, I love golf, but I can only play twice a week. I mean, I don't want to play 4 or 5 times a week.
Right.
And I don't want to eat at Bob Evans every day. I just don't want to do that stuff. Maybe I shouldn't have said that out loud, but I don't know. I want to
Mhm.
do things differently. So we'll figure
Yeah.
it out.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, is there a good spot? So, if people are looking to reach out to you to find the book, what's the best place where people can find you at?
Yeah, they can. The book's on Amazon. So Culture's an Inside Job.
Okay.
And then my email's psmcgohan@outlook.com. And you're welcome to send me an email anytime.
All right. Well, good. So Scott, I appreciate the time today and hearing your story. I think you've obviously done a great job from being the seventh employee hired and then took over at about 40 employees and grown it to where it is today. And excited for what's ahead for you as well. So,
Well, I've enjoyed it. Thanks for having me too.
all right. Yep. Well, good to chat with you, Scott.